Welcome everyone to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about how we can get into better health, better nutrition, and a better life. And the way we do that might not be as simple or might not be as difficult as we think, because it might be as easy as getting a coach, and it might be as hard as paying attention. And in our life and in our world right now, getting a coach is a very simple task. Doing the actions that the coach is requiring could be very difficult. Making yourself aware that you need a coach can be very difficult. We have to look at what we're lacking or what we're needing in our life, because if we're going to simply want something and we are going to simply look for change, or we're going to give ourselves an idea for change, but we don't take any action for change, we're always going to be in that loop. And we can get out of that loop. We just have to understand how to do it. And typically when you're stuck, the best form of action is to get a guide. Whether it be a life coach, health coach, or nutrition coach, depending on what area you're going to be looking to make some improvements and making some adjustments, that's who you should be seeking. And what we do here in Coaching in Session is we make it very simple for you to find the right fit. Do you need a health coach? We got it. Do you need a nutrition coach? We got it. And today we're going to be having Jolene Hermanson, who's going to be coming on as a certified health and nutrition coach. And she's going to be talking about the work she does, how she helps people. And we're going to be diving deep into health and how we can really make some changes in our life. And it doesn't have to be difficult. Here's that interview with Jolene and myself. Welcome, Jolene Hermanson, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on. Today, I have you on as a certified health and nutrition coach. And what a time for that, because we are in January when this episode is going to be airing. And nutrition and health are so important to people right now. They gave themselves a New Year's resolution, and they're doing everything in their power right now to stay on track. And I know the work that you do is going to be able to help many people get on track or stay on track. But without me telling everyone what you do in your whole entire career, maybe in your own words, say what you do and how you help people.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm a certified health and wellness nutrition coach. I have a level 2 certification through Precision Nutrition. I work primarily right now with women that are in sciences and engineering and technology. I focus a lot on nutrition and health, but also on other aspects of their life that will basically affect their nutrition and their health as well. So more of a life coaching / health coaching approach. And where I got started on that was originally was a professional geoscientist. And then when I went on maternity leave, my second maternity leave, I really got into nutrition and I wanted to learn more about it. And when COVID hit, I chose that time to pursue the coaching certification. I spent 6 months through the first level 2 and then another year to do a second level 2 advanced certificate, which really helped me with my coaching skills. And then that kind of led me towards getting more into the life coaching aspect of things, because I saw how interconnected it all was to people's ability to change their nutrition.
You said two interesting things. So I want to kind of touch base, because I know this is on a personal level too. The first was maternity, right? So you have 2 children, I believe. You went from, being pregnant to getting back on track with your health. So I want to talk about that story. And then I want to talk about the skills that we learned in life coaching. So talking about that too, so the different skills that you learned that makes you a better person or a better coach. You can just break it down any way, which way you want.
The change from having a baby, becoming pregnant, to then having the baby and then coming back to basically your body after now you've had 1 children, 2 children. It was a big mindset change as well as a physical change. I think when I initially, after my first baby, there was sort of a fear there that, the stories that everybody tells is that you're never the same, that it's impossible to get back to the way you were. And I think a part of me just refused to believe that and used it almost as a motivation to get back to my pre-baby habits. And I wouldn't say it's the same. It's never going to be exactly the same. But what it allowed me to do was to really evaluate what works and what doesn't work, versus maybe prior to having a baby, I was going through the motions a little bit. And so it gave me a very big awareness of, okay, nutrition really plays such an important aspect here. more than the physical fitness part of it. And I never really paid as much attention to it until after I really needed to, after I'd had children. And I think too, also fueling their nutrition gave me a much bigger and broader perspective, especially when one of my kids has allergies and food intolerances. That really got me more curious about that side of nutrition. And so that it just prompted me to investigate it further. And again, one of the reasons why I became certified as a nutrition coach was so that I could really understand about nutrition and why did it seem so complicated. And I wanted it to be I wanted to understand it so that it would be simple in my mind. And I feel like I'm at that point now where it seems very simple to me and quite basic. And I'm not like overcomplicating things. And it's easy for me to maintain because of that.
Yeah. For me, I find it amazing when a woman can give birth, multiple times and then get her body back. There was this lady at my gym. She had probably a kid, maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. And she was coming into the gym and she had a big belly, right? And then so she was out, I think, for a couple of months, like after the baby. But then she's right back in it, right? Back in the mix, in the gym. And I think within, I want to say like 3 to 6 months, she was like back to her regular body. And I was like, that's amazing. But like her mindset is wonderful. She's like dedicated to going to the gym. She's super focused when she's in there. And I'm sure her nutrition is on point too. Just looking at like other people in my family, they would have a baby and they might not go to the gym. They might not take care of their health. Maybe they start eating a little bit more junk food. It's very difficult for them to get out of that mindset that was created. And I'm not sure if it was created during pregnancy because I know there's a lot of cravings that go on. So they might want like a lot of ice cream and cakes and stuff like that. Things that they might not typically eat or indulge in to a certain extent. And then they always say that the baby wants it. Maybe the baby does want that. But then after the baby's out, do we still want that, right?
Yeah, I found that like such an interesting cultural experience because I would have people like, no, I wouldn't use that excuse. Like I refused to use that excuse. I still had cravings that were really outside of the norm. Like I loved those Mr. Noodle soups with the crazy salt in them. But I was really conscious of that. And then I would be out at social gatherings and people would say, it's for the baby, like that whole mentality of like, you can do it now, like soak it up, enjoy it while it lasts. And I was like, no, like that's exactly what's going to make it twice as hard for me to get back into shape after the baby. So like, it wasn't just in my head, it was other people with that thought in their head that were trying to project that onto me. It was so bizarre.
For my wife, she was also eating those noodles too. So I don't think it's out of the norm. I think it's just something about those noodles that ladies love. They're like, all right, I just need more sodium and more carbs.
The salt. Yeah. The carbs.
Get it in my body. Again, that's so interesting for you to realize that though, where you're starting to see that, okay, I'm eating these foods. I'm conscious that I'm eating these foods and I don't want to make it a habit, regardless of what the world is telling me to do. Oh, it's for the baby. And I think that happens quite a bit. Oh, it's the weekend. Indulge a little bit. Self-care. Just take care of yourself, right? It's okay to have a pizza every evening or something like that, as long as you work out. And I always say you can't outwork a bad diet. It's very important that we have our nutrition on lock. And I wanted to talk to you about nutrition before we get into the other things. If you had to give nutrition a percent, for example, nutrition is 70% and workout is maybe 30%, right? Just kind of give it like a quick percent. How important is nutrition versus exercise?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably depend on the person and the age. And like if we were talking like a 20-year-old man in university, he could probably get away with eating a lot of Mr. Noodles. And if he was working out and super active, he could probably burn that off pretty quickly. Or even like my kids, I'm thinking of too, right? Who are like quite little versus like 50 or 60-year-old woman, nutrition probably is going to be like 90% or more of importance in comparison. So like, I think that's a really critical piece that a lot of us forget. And I think sometimes the research that a lot of us read or that is kind of like picked out in buzz articles is a lot of it is centered around men that have completely different hormones than women, especially as depending on their age and where they are in their life. So I think that question it depends, which is kind of an annoying answer. I would say though, from my experience working with women who are in like their 30s, 40s, 50s, the diet becomes increasingly more important as we age after we have kids. And it also, I mean, it builds our muscle. And so that also plays a huge role. Women who are more sedentary, who don't have as much muscle, really need to focus on their nutrition. One, to build the muscle. And also it just, if we don't have as much muscle, we're not burning the calories as quickly. The nutrients aren't getting partitioned as easily. So then nutrition becomes even more important for those types of people.
And I will say the answer was not annoying. It's extremely appropriate, because when I turned 28 years old, I was able to eat like loads of rice. I can eat probably like 4 cups of rice with my meal, and I didn't gain a pound. As soon as I hit 28, everything changed. It was like, all right, body, if you eat even 1 cup of rice, you're going to gain some weight, right? So then I started to see that. And it took me probably like, I would say almost 6 months for me to realize it, because then I started to gain weight. And I'm like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to the gym and I'm still working out. What is going on? And my body was changing because I was getting older. And we do have to be cognizant of that. We do have to understand where we are, because if you're younger, your body just works different. Kids can go around eating cakes and sweets, and it's going to be a lot more difficult for them. Also putting a factor genetics in there, because some kids are going to have that genetic that just packs on weight. But there's going to be some who are just super skinny. For me, I was super skinny, like growing up. I was like always like, I can eat all the cake, all the ice cream, all the rice. I can eat whatever I wanted, and I didn't gain any weight. And my mom would always go to the doctor. He's so skinny. He's so skinny. He's so skinny. And the doctor is just like, don't worry. He's going to fill out in time. And sure enough, when I hit my teen years, I started to fill out. But my mom tried to sabotage me. I'm going to say this. My mom tried to sabotage me. She would always bring me fast food in the evenings because she's trying to fatten me up. So I would have like a hamburger, some French fries, some chicken nuggets. I did that for, I think, a year in high school. I think I gained probably like 15 pounds. And I was like, now I need to get back in shape, because in high school, appearance is a big deal. So I got back in shape, and I was like, no more fast food. So like, that's why me and fast food, we basically have a hate relationship. It's not love hate. I just can't eat it, because if I do, I'm just going to pack on that weight so quickly. My mom taught me that lesson, I guess, unknowingly, because she was trying to fatten me up. But fast food is good occasionally, especially like if you're traveling, things like that. But you don't want to make it a staple. So, like we really have to kind of get down our nutrition. What are some foods that you would recommend to people who are trying to be aware of what they eat? Would it be more like grains like rice, or maybe something like more green leafy vegetables, etc.?
Yeah, just before I'm going to go on to that, but I have to tell you, it's so funny because I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. And so I had the same experience.
You're to blame.
And so I would work like some nights till 12:30 at night, and there would be like leftover ice cream and fries and all the things. And I probably gained 15 or 20 pounds as well in grade 12. That was actually my first experience with like weight gain and then having to lose it. So anyways, to answer the question you had, I mean, for the most part, most people are under eating vegetables of any kind. Like, even just forget the leafy greens, like they're just under eating vegetables altogether, and like worrying about things like the carbs and carrots, but like not eating enough fiber and vegetables. Like, forget all those little details, right? And proteins, like lean proteins. Like, most people are not eating enough of those two things. So if we just focused on adding more of those things, it would push out a lot of the other like junk, and it would make us feel more full, because we'd be getting fiber, we'd be filling up like volume wise, we'd be eating more. So our stomach feels more full when we eat those things, like literally chewing on like a chunk of steak or a chunk of chicken with like a big plate of vegetables is going to make you feel full. So you're not going to eat as much of the bread and rice and like the white rice and all the other stuff. And it's just easy to remember. Like, it really isn't complicated. It's just that it's so simple and basic that it's a little bit boring. And I think that's what people struggle with. So they were like, no, it's got to be harder than that. It's got to be more complicated. There has to be like supplements, or there has to be a special formula that I'm missing. But there's not. It's very basic. It's just a little boring. Really, to eat healthy, to eat well it can be kind of basic. And I think that's where our brain kind of craves more entertainment from our food And I think that's the sort of the problem. Like if we're not getting entertainment from our life, we're relying on food, then for someone to say eat more protein and vegetables is like, well, then what am I going to do with my Friday nights?
So if someone's eating a steak, let's say some celery, some carrot, some broccoli, cauliflower. After dinner, they're going to say, I need something sweet. I need ice cream. I need some cookies or some cakes. Why do people get that? Is it because of what you just said? It's boring to eat those healthy foods and we think that we need these sugars, or it's because our body is maybe missing something and it's giving us that craving?
I mean, it could probably be a bit of both. Like I know I still get that craving. And for me, it was because of how I was raised. Or I don't even want to blame it on my parents. It was because of how I ate when I was younger, and I created a habit loop so that after dinner or even after like a bigger meal, my brain says, okay, that's your trigger. Like now it's the trigger response, like habit loop. So the brain just craves that dopamine hit from the sugar or from the sweetness. And so you feel an urge to go and fulfill that desire that you have. I mean, I think in some cases it could be that somebody was like, dehydrated and they were actually thirsty and they're thinking that they're hungry or they're still hungry because of other things. But I think for the most part, it's a habit that we've gotten into. And I think for the majority of people, the only way to kind of break that habit is to allow that urge to be there and to not act on it. That's one option. And you have to just like, instead of trying to resist it, just really allow it, like notice where you're feeling it and just walk through life feeling that uncomfortable feeling, and do that enough times, over a week or 2-week period until that urge starts to dissipate and go away. That's one option. The other option is to find healthier snacks that might still satisfy that craving, but you're not consuming the same amount of energy necessarily. And that doesn't make the habit go away, but it does allow you to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling and maybe have something that adds to your nutrition.
Yeah, it's like the cultural aspect of it where we want our appetizer, then we want our main course. And then after our main course, it's only common sense that we get some dessert. So whatever that dessert is, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just that we give ourselves that habit. It's also that we give ourselves a habit of having 3 meals a day. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And our body might not need 3 meals a day. Our body might need one. It might need 2, right? Maybe kids need more because they're more active and their body's growing. But for most adults, they're not going to expend a lot of energy, especially many people have very, very easy jobs now. So it's not manual labor, more IT stuff, data entry, things along those lines. So they're behind a keyboard and a monitor for the majority of the day, and there's not a lot of movement. So their body is not going to need as many calories, but we still give our bodies all of those calories. And people start to catch on like, oh, wait, I'm gaining, 5 pounds or 10 pounds. And it's because they don't realize before it's too late, oh, wait, I have this job and I'm not being as active, but I'm still eating back how like I was in college when I was playing football or playing volleyball or a sport. And so we have to learn the difference between where we were and where we are today.
Yeah, totally. That awareness is so critical. And I think a lot of times we're like, well, I'm eating healthy. I don't understand. And then if you actually like journal what you're eating and how often you're eating. And one thing I was really focusing on with my clients was journaling their hunger levels. So when do you start eating? Like, where are you on a hunger scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like super full and 1 being really hungry? Where are you when you start eating? And I did this before I gave it to my clients because I really thought that I was only eating when I was hungry and stopping when I was satisfied. And I noticed how much I was snacking throughout the day when I wasn't really that hungry yet. Like I thought I was hungry in my head, but when I actually was mindful and like paid attention to what my stomach was saying, I wasn't hungry. It was like my brain, like it was like I confused the sensations. And it wasn't until I really tuned in and paid attention that I was like, oh, I could actually probably go another 2 hours and not eat and be totally fine. So I think that awareness, like having a tool to create awareness, it sounds really cliche, but that really is such a powerful thing for us to And like you said, like, okay, so where am I at right now? What am I eating and what am I doing in my day? Like looking at the math of it versus being like, oh, I'm gaining weight, I'm horrible, like just sinking into the drama and not actually looking at like, what do I actually need here in a day to day to fuel the energy I'm expending?
Yeah. And you also said something really powerful where you said you were going to start some journaling and figuring out what am I doing? And I think that's so important. And this is going to kind of lead us into the life coaching aspect because I'm a big believer in talking and talking, walking the walk, where if you want someone to do something, you should see if it works for you too. And I remember early on in college and even after college, if I had any issues, I would write it down in a journal, whether it be, okay, I'm having some type of thoughts in my mind. Okay, like it could be sadness, depression, anger, whatever the feeling was, right? I would write it down and then I would look at it, right? If I'm eating poorly, why am I eating poorly? If I'm not sleeping well, why am I not sleeping well? And then it's extremely helpful. I know you said early on that you were able to learn about coaching and get better at it. And I kind of wanted to hear your story on how you went from being a beginner coach to where you are today.
Yeah, it was, I feel like it was a painful process for me, but I think in my mind, my brain makes it worse than like it probably was, just because I see where I was when I started, what I thought coaching was. And now I understand that that wasn't coaching. That was like consulting. Like I was like telling people what to do, which was fine. Like that's what they wanted, the initial clients that signed up with me. But I called myself a coach and it wasn't really coaching. It was like telling people what, they should be eating and advising them on that. Whereas when I really learned about coaching was that, oh, like my client is my equal and I'm helping them find the answer within themselves and asking them the questions, like looking in their brain, seeing what thoughts are keeping them stuck, like keeping them with the results that they have versus the results that they want. So helping to pull that out. What I recognized was that it was our thoughts. It's typically always our thoughts that create some kind of emotional state in us that causes us to take behaviors. And so now with my coaching, I really focus on that aspect of it, the thoughts and the feelings that are creating the behaviors that people are either doing that's creating a result they want or doing that's creating a result that they don't want. And I can help with the behavior piece. Like I can help them with telling them, what actions scientifically have shown to create the result that they want, or actions that they might want to help them figure out strategies for time management or figure out strategies for creating boundaries for themselves at work or at home. But I think the biggest part is if they keep coming up against resistance and they're not like in their own head and they're not taking those actions, it's typically because of a thought that they're having or a belief that they have about themselves. And then so that's really interesting what you said about that you will sit down and write it out, because I really think that's where the answers are. There's some kind of belief we're having about ourselves that we need to create awareness around that before we look at the action piece of it.
I always say that we have many of the answers that we need within us. We just have to dig a little bit deeper. You're completely right. We are in control of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And I think we are so quick to relinquish those. So my thoughts might be what someone else thinks. So for example, going back to our idea of pregnancy, oh, the baby wants it, things like that, right? So they're taking over my thoughts, my feelings. So how should I feel? Someone might say, well, it's a self-care day, right? So if you're feeling down, who cares if you have a pint of ice cream? Now they're in control of your feelings and then your actions. You continue with those negative habits. We're in that loop oftentimes where we give ourselves thoughts, feelings, and actions that are not congruent to the health that we want, to the body that we want to attain. And then we wonder why we don't have the body we want or the life we want. And it's so important to work with a health coach or a nutrition coach or just someone who's going to hold us accountable. Because if we don't have that, then we're going to be like our own worst enemy. We're going to say, well, I had a rough day at work, or it's Friday. I have to go to the club and I have to go drink all these sugary cocktails. It's a detriment because if you wake up the next day on Saturday and you feel like you don't want to even go through that day, you essentially wasted now this whole Saturday that you could have been productive and you could have made some changes in your life. it kind of gets us into the way we should be thinking. You have some work with the 6 dimensions of deep health. And I'm going to say, I'm not too familiar with it. I know what they are, but I don't know like the ins and outs. I might know things on the surface level, but when I talk to someone like you who's a specialist and who really prides himself in this type of work and they understand it and they can explain it so much better, I think you can really provide the audience with a deep understanding of health and then a course of action that they can take in order to get a better healthy mind and body. So if you could, can you help us with those 6 dimensions of deep health?
So I'll just say what the 6 dimensions are, and then we can go through and I can give examples in my own life, and I'm sure you have some as well. So the 6 dimensions, the idea behind it being that these are sort of 6 domains of our life that affect one. It's like almost like a cog, like in a wheel. If you affect one, you essentially will affect them all. So if you're suffering in one area, it's going to affect the other areas of your deep health. So the 6 dimensions are physical health, mental health, emotional health, social health, or like relationship health, environmental health, and existential health, which is basically spirituality, spiritual health, and a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. For me, like where I noticed this happening without ever, before I knew what the 6 dimensions of health were. I mean, a big one for me was nutrition. Before I even knew that nutrition was something I should be paying attention to. So I was really struggling after I'd had my first weight gain in high school. I decided I was going to become a runner, and that was how I was going to lose the weight. And so this was in my 20s when this worked for me. But I ran all the time. I was training to run a 10K and I had never really ran before. So I ended up losing like 20 or 25 pounds just purely from running. And also I really stopped eating a lot because I would run all morning and then I would like not eat breakfast and I'd have like 2 little small meals. And so, yeah, I lost a lot of weight that way. But what else happened was my hair started to fall out. I got completely anxious. And was at that point when I was entering university, I became really, really anxious about my grades. And I don't really know where that came from other than there was a self-identity piece that I had with I couldn't fail. Like I was really afraid to fail at university, even though I was getting like A pluses. I also now believe that my lack of proper nutrition was causing the anxiety, or at least perpetuating it, because it was quite severe. When I think back to that time in my life, I was really out of balance with my mental health, with my emotional health. My physical health, if someone looked from the outside, would have seemed quite high because I was killing it with my 10K runs, but like the nutrition wasn't there. So a lot of my well-being wasn't really super healthy. So that then also affected my relationships because I was really anxious. And when I would then drink, because I wasn't eating properly, I was like just going off the deep end and causing a havoc in my personal life. I was causing havoc with my parents because I was just like an emotional roller coaster. And then sense of purpose, like I had no idea. I had no sense of purpose. I was sort of just like, felt like a ping pong ball kind of going between different classes and activities. And I just had no sense of real direction. So my like deep health wheel was totally off. Even though I'd lost 25 pounds and everyone said I looked great, my deep health was not anywhere close to where it is right now.
When we think someone is doing well, we look on the outside. For example, bodybuilders have all these muscles. They look great typically, but they're taking all these supplements and they're drinking all these protein shakes and all these pre-workouts, and their liver has to basically, clean everything or cleanse their body. So there comes a time when their body starts to break down and they find themselves in a hospital where they're on a ventilator or they're on an IV drip. And it's because they are not doing what is appropriate for proper nutrition. They're doing everything to give them big muscles, the physical aspect, right? Like our first deep step, but everything else is not there. And I always say, in order to build a house, you need a solid foundation. And if you don't have a solid foundation, then the house you build or the home you build, we don't know how long it's going to last. So all of these 6 deep steps are going to be an essential aspect to the foundation. And if we are missing one or the other, everything else is going to kind of topple over. So it's a good idea to learn, I guess, a sense of balance, or if not even balance, but an awareness of it. So it's like, okay, just like you in college, like you had the testing anxiety and you started to see yourself, if you were drinking and you're an emotional roller coaster, you knew something was off. And I think some people, when they get that idea that something is off, they just ignore it. Similar to how if your car engine has a check engine light, they just like put some tape over it. Or if they hear a noise on the car, they just turn the music a little bit louder so they don't hear
People
it.
be like, oh, it's normal to be nervous in school, but it wasn't. It wasn't a normal. It didn't have to be like that. Going back to what we were talking about with journaling, I've created, and it was actually based on a deep health assessment that Precision Nutrition has, but I created one more specific to the women that I work with they're more in like a professional job. And so I had some questions there about their job, because a lot of the women I work with do suffer from either imposter syndrome or from perfectionism or people pleasing or procrastination. So those can all be signs that something in our deep health is off as well. So I sort of modified the assessment from Precision Nutrition, and I went through it myself, and it reminded me of where I used to be. But also it did give me some more awareness even of where I am now and where I'm still working to build even better boundaries in my work and personal life to improve my communication skills. It's so interesting how those things, which we don't really realize are connected to nutrition, really are, or to health. Because if we don't have proper boundaries, we might not take the steps to go work out at the gym, or we might not have the time to food prep. All those reasons why people can't do it. It's typically we see it in a lot of other aspects of our life. And so by taking that assessment or a similar assessment and just figuring out where you're at, gaining that awareness, you can start to simplify it and really narrow in on the specific thing that will help you to improve a lot of different aspects of your life.
And you said reasons. Do you think it's a reason, we give ourselves a reason, or do we give ourselves an excuse? Because I can say that the reason I don't meal prep is because I don't have any time. But I will wait in McDonald's in the drive-thru for 10 minutes a day. So out of the whole week, that's 60 minutes. So you're telling me you couldn't use that 60 minutes to meal prep. So it's kind of like we give ourselves a reason, but is it really an excuse?
Well, it's so funny the way that the brain will do that. It'll give you, I call them thought errors. Like it'll tell you a lie that's not the truth. Like, yeah, if you looked at the time it takes you to sit through McDonald's versus like just throwing a chicken breast in the oven, it's probably close to the same time, if not less, but it's more energy for us to do the other thing. So our brain always wants to save energy. So it's going to tell us like, oh, it's just easier to go do this thing. I wouldn't say that I suppose I have compassion for those reasons. I think sometimes they really do feel very, very true. But typically when you break it down and you look at the math of it, a lot of the times it's a thought error, meaning it's basically an excuse that our brain's using to keep us conserving energy. I do work with people and I think part of coaching is trying to sort of have that perspective for clients who do feel like it's really true for them. And so you can just kind of help to point those things out to really be like, is that true? Or is that just a thought you're having or a belief you're having? And sometimes I do have clients who, because they're so like me, I almost get into the pool with them a little bit where I'm like, yeah, that is really hard. Like, how do you do that? But when I do that, then it almost takes away from finding the solution and being solution-based. So for me, it's really important to stay up and to recognize people's obstacles and then be like, okay, well, that might be true, but what do we want to do about it? Like, I really do believe there's always some kind of resourceful, creative solution around most obstacles, like helping my client explore anything and everything in their control to get them around obstacles. There really are some things that aren't in people's control. We can't really change those things, but I'm positive we can find alternative solutions around that or things that we can try and experiment with. So with that excuse of not having enough time, one is looking at like, is that true? And then if it is true, what do we want to do about that? Like, is that something you're choosing? Is there another option? Could we create more time? I think those are the kinds of questions that I like to explore.
And I think there's nothing wrong with telling someone that something is challenging or, using your own personal experience saying, yes, I went through the same thing. It's very difficult. I have an understanding of where you are. I don't know completely where you are because we're different people, but I do have some knowledge on that. And just coming with that compassion, I think is so appropriate, especially in a coaching world, because the person gets to see that you're human. If we look at a motivational speaker, I'm not going to look at all of the wonderful things they have done in their life. I'm going to be more attracted to someone who went through hell and got out of it versus someone who is amazing from day one and is amazing still on day 100. I want to know the warrior who had to fight his way up to amazing, because that's going to teach me more than someone who didn't have to go through these challenges, these trials and tribulations, basically, of growth. And that's what growth is, essentially, is breaking down, building back up. Muscle, same thing. We tear the muscle so it can get stronger. And our mind, sometimes we have to go through a trauma, and that trauma makes us stronger. Typically, when you have a trauma, you always come back stronger. I mean, if you can think in your life when you had a trauma and you didn't become stronger because of that trauma, I mean, it's going to be very hard to find people who don't become stronger because of a trauma. Now, if someone gives up, that's a different story, because it's very easy to want to give up. And in the beginning, you might want to give up, but you have to have that strong mental fortitude. And that's one of the aspects here, like the mental part, where we're trying to focus on someone's mental. And it's very important, because we can say, oh, you have to have good habits and you have to do this and you have to do that. But if your mental is not fortified, we're always going to find ourselves in the same loop every single week or every single year. And we're in January right now, and people are in that mental battle. In the next couple of months, they're going to be starting to question themselves. Is this really worth it? Should I keep going? What's the point? And there is a point. We just have to understand our mental.
That, I think, is such a foundational piece of it all. I think where we go back to, if you start to notice those obstacles, if you start feeling like, what's the point, or just this once, or this isn't working anyways, it's really important to recognize those thoughts, because those are the things that are going to keep you or have you going backwards. Where people can gain awareness of that is really just writing out. And then again, questioning those things, like, is it true? Is it true there is no point? Like, why did I start this to begin with? Reconnecting with that why, like a really powerful why that actually shifts an emotion inside of them, is so essential. It doesn't have to feel like joyous all the time necessarily. You might not be enjoying going to the gym every second day, but you finding a thought that will fuel a determination and a commitment in you, despite not enjoying every aspect of it, is really critical for moving yourself past those resistant moments.
And emotional is one of the steps, because if we are not aware of our emotional state, we are going to just be a victim of our emotions. And it doesn't necessarily matter the emotion. You don't always have to feel happy, just like you said. I think for me in my life, some of the most significant changes came from anger, where I used anger to learn about me, learn about my body. I don't recommend anger long term, but it's a great awareness tool, because I remember one time I was in the gym and I don't know what happened the day before. I don't know if I was at work or if I was at school. All I know is I was furious. I was so upset. I don't know why. I went to the gym that day and I was like, I'm going to lift this whole entire gym. That's how much I was like thinking I could lift, because the anger was there. So I started to put on the plates to do some benches, and I was, lifting pretty good. And then it started to get a little bit heavier. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm so angry. Why can't I lift this weight? Because basically in my mind, this anger was so big. I was thinking I was big too, but my body was still the same it was. So I learned that day that my anger can sometimes be bigger than myself. And I have to learn how to balance that a lot better. So my emotions can be very high sometimes. And how can I bring down my emotions to be balanced with everything else, with my physical? Because if my physical and my emotions are not level, I'm going to do things that hurt myself, because I could have kept on going and I could have hurt my shoulder. And I did in college. I hurt my shoulder, where it's like I was out for 3 months in the gym because I was more emotional than I was understanding my physical. The awareness aspect of the whole, like the deep health, is so important, because if we are just going to focus on one, something else suffers.
That's so interesting. I don't think I've had that experience before with lifting weights where my emotions were bigger than my body. I find that really fascinating.
Maybe it's because I'm a man. I don't know. It could be a man thing, because I know a lot of men who go through the same exact emotion that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's super cool. Yeah, I think it very well could be. And I think as a female, I mean, I do lift weights. That's like my primary way I work out is with lifting weights now, but maybe I'm not pushing myself to my limit like that too. So that's really like, I never am at like a one rep max or like 3 rep max. I'm typically lifting like 10. So I would never get to that point. That's really curious. I'll have to ask my husband about that too, if he's ever experienced that. For me, where I really notice it on a day-to-day basis now is parenting. So if I had tried to parent my children like in my 20s, when I didn't have this, I wouldn't say I have it figured out, but I have it figured out more or less. I don't know. I think I would have been the worst parent ever. I had no emotional regulation. And I think it's so interesting how in parenting, in health, in business, like one of our primary assets is emotional regulation. And so if we, like as a parent, if I am not able to regulate my emotions, like manage my emotions, I mean, my kids certainly aren't managing their emotions. So it's like, it creates like chaos in our lives. And I think the same thing is true in business where, if I put out a post on social media and nobody responds to it, if I don't have my like emotions in check, I could very well feel rejected and then like run and hide under a blanket and never post again on social media. But I don't, because I don't allow an outside circumstance to affect my emotions. I make sure my thoughts affect my emotions. And I think the same is true in health as well. If we have one off day and we allow that to create a guilt in us or a shame in us, and then we want to fix that guilt and shame by eating more, that's when people spiral off to get off the wagon that they're on, so to speak, versus recognizing the guilt and shame that they might feel and having self-compassion and being like, oh, okay, I'm feeling really crappy about that. Now what do I want to do? Like, it's okay. This is normal. People go through this. And then allowing that guilt and emotion to be there and managing it and moving forward through a new emotion, a recommitment to do what the actions they want to do. So I think regardless of your goal, that emotional health piece is critical.
I find it hard to believe that even if you had kids in your 20s, that you would be a bad parent because because you have the mindset of a great parent, number one, because I know the mindset of bad parents and you don't have it. Relationships, right, is one of the dimensions of deep health. Understanding that, right, you had a very good relationship with yourself. You were aware of yourself. That right there is going to make it very easy for you to look at another human and saying, I can look at this person and I can see what they need or what they desire. That's how we grow. Because if we just focus on ourselves, then that type of mindset is going to be one of those bad parents, right? Where if we look at people in their teens, they want to live their life. They want to go out and party and they don't really want too much responsibilities quite yet. They want to go live and experience life. And especially where there's a drinking limit or age where it's like you have to be 18 or you have to be 21 to drink or smoke. They finally get to that point in their life and they just lose control. So they're like, I'm going to focus on this because I can finally have it. I've been waiting for 18 years to get this. And guess what's going to happen? I finally got it. And once they get it, guess what happens? They don't know how to act because they're just going to keep on drinking or partying or doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the sole focus is themselves. But for you, I'm getting the vibe that you were always looking at other people. You were always looking around, whether it be your parents, whether it be your relationships, you were looking around. And if you had a little human following you around, calling you mom, I'm sure you would have looked at them and said, what do you need?
It's true. It probably would have changed me very quickly that when you hold your baby for the first time, like I really do think sometimes change can be slow, but I think sometimes change can be really quick too. You have a different perspective shift and all of a sudden your mind just gets out from behind whatever box it was in and sees the world differently. And so you're probably right. If I had had a responsibility of a child, that would have allowed me to focus myself not so much in like on myself and my appearance and all the other things and would have focused on them. Yeah.
It's instinct too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's instinct for sure. I think where I notice as a parent where the instinct disappoints me a little bit, like personally, is when I do get emotionally triggered. And then I think like, wow, isn't that interesting? Like my survival instincts kick in. So it can be my kid that triggers that in me where I'll have like this fierce anger over something they did. And so then it's like my maternal instinct takes a bit of a hiatus, and I want to react to what they're doing. And a part of that is a fear for them. So if they're acting out, I'm fearful that they won't be able to be out in society. Like, I don't know what that primal instinct necessarily is in certain instances, but there's a fear there. And so then you react with anger. And that's been a really interesting thing for me to notice as a parent. And I know a lot of people say parenting is hard, but I think what I'm realizing is what they meant by that is parenting makes you sometimes not be the best version of yourself because of all of those triggers that come up. So the more I learn about, you think that you've figured out your triggers and that you're very emotionally regulated, and then you have a child and you realize that you still have a lot of work to do. So yeah, it's interesting how you do have instinct, but you also have instincts in other, like, more primal instincts too, that aren't just maternal.
I wrote a whole thesis paper on patience, how a teacher needs patience. And I was a teacher for several years before I went into the coaching world. This paper talks about the importance of patience, why a teacher needs patience. And I had all the patience in the world, even for the students who were my heavy hitters. And those were the bad kids who would always interrupt and would make life miserable that day. But if you were there for them and you just always said, all right, it doesn't matter how bad you want to be, I'm still going to teach you, right? They loved that aspect because eventually I broke them. And they were like, all right, Mr. Rearden, I'm going to listen to you finally. Like, thank you. It only took a year and a half, but I got you. Thank you. No, so now we can get on board and we can catch you up. I found that even though I have all the patience for students, all the patience for kids that are not my kids, when it comes to mine, patience is low. So I was like, whoa, what happened? I thought I had all this patience. I wrote a whole thesis paper. I should have an abundance of patience. Right. But guess what? I do not. And it's because we give ourselves a condition for that child. We are saying, hey, you need to be appropriate, right? You have to behave yourself. You're not supposed to be throwing things in the house. That's why, you broke my favorite pot or something like that. So it's like we're basically telling them, like, you can do this, but it has to be in the right environment. You can play ball, but outside, not inside. I understand it's snowing outside. I understand it's raining outside. But if it's not appropriate weather, what can we do instead? So it's that whole learning process of what's appropriate.
Setting boundaries, and I think compassion, every aspect of the deep health circle, I think both of those things are really critical. And with self-compassion, there's 3 aspects of it. Dr. Kristen Neff, she's like one of the lead researchers on self-compassion. She talks about kindness, a sense of common humanity, so connection, and mindfulness. With the parenting and relationship health, I think the more I practice self-compassion, being kind to myself when I mess up, knowing that it happens to other people, like it's not just me, it takes me out of that isolation and shame, and being mindful, so being aware of the emotions and thoughts that are causing some of those behaviors. When I practice that, I find I am a much better parent. It really improves my relationship health. I can sit with some of those broken things on the floor easier because I know that it just happens to people. It's just, life is just messy. And so and then I think setting boundaries. So we go, okay, well, maybe football inside the living room isn't the best thing to do for playtime. Like you said, what else can we do that will be fun? And yeah, so I totally agree with that.
Have to understand about children is that they're learning things for the first time in their whole entire life. Like, they don't know what wet socks feel like. So that's why they're going to jump in a puddle. We know better, but we have to deal with the wet sock. We know that playing in the mud is not a good idea because you're going to get all dirty and then you're going to go into the car and then you're going to track mud all over the home. We know that, but they want to feel the mud. They want to feel it between their fingertips and they want to maybe make a castle or whatever they're going to make, mud pies.
Yeah. It's so easy to forget that.
And we were there. We were young at one point where we were learning for the first time. And fortunately, like, since I was a teacher, I can see that with many of the students that I've taught, where I'm seeing that they progress different stages as they grow and they level up in school. So in kindergarten, they have a very basic way of thinking. And then in 6th grade, for example, they have a totally different way of thinking. So you can't expect the same things that you would from different ages. And then we have to also put ourselves into their shoes, similar to how we put ourselves in our client's shoes sometimes. Yes, I had that same experience. And I've had many experiences that might be similar to many of my clients. And I can say, that sucks. That doesn't feel good. Let's get you some help. Let's get you out of that way of thinking. And we might have played football or basketball in the house and broke something. We might have crashed a car that we weren't supposed to be driving. There's so many different things that we could have done when we were younger that our parents probably said, I'm surprised you're still alive. But it's important that we understand that. And kids are learning from their environment and the behaviors that we give them. So if you know about the stages of childhood development, two prime stages are environment and behavior. So your kids are going to be looking at you when you react to them, because you know what they're going to do when they have kids? They're going to react because that's the behavior that they learned. So if we are very cognizant of how we act, even if we're furious, we have to go, okay, well, let's get the broom, something like that, right? Just say, we can fix this. For example, if you are at a restaurant, they're fooling around, you're like, stop fooling around, you're going to spill your milk. Guess what they do? Finally knock over the milk. Now you can either yell at them or you can help them clean it up. Which one do you do? And sometimes people are so checked out, the only option they have is to yell at the kid. And what do you think that does to the kid? It brings them down because they made a mistake, and that negativity is going to stay with them. So we have to understand that too, because we have a lot going on. We have so much in our, on our lives, so much challenge, so much anxiety, so much fear and doubt maybe. And the littlest of triggers, our kids spilling a glass of milk can set us off. But we do have to be aware of their environment too, because we are their environment. They are looking at us as their leader or their coach. And they're like, okay, I'm going to follow mom's example. I'm going to go follow dad's example. Because if we are just going to be bad examples, imagine what our clients would think if we were maybe not in the best shape or we weren't in the best mindset. They're going to say, well, I guess this is what I should do, right? So we create the environment. And that's one of the stages.
And I almost think, as you're thinking about that, and I'm putting myself in that situation, in hindsight, it's always like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't react like that, or I should just have helped them clean up the milk. In the moment, and I don't know what the listeners, what thoughts might go through their head, but I think this is probably a common thought is, if I don't react angrily now, they won't know that this is a problem. It's almost like your brain tells you that you have to show them it's a problem. So you have to react in an angry way. But I don't think I think, again, that's a thought error. I think the opposite, really, when I'm being calm and rational about it, is true, where you can have just as a powerful of an effect by communicating why we don't do this, cleaning it up, going home, having to talk about it after when everybody's calm. The brain learns much better when it's calm versus in the moment when it's in a stress state. It's not learning anything. So to increase the stress by getting angry, it actually makes it less likely they're going to learn from it. But it's so interesting how, as you're saying that, I'm going through a scenario in my mind that was similar. And I know that's the thought that pops up is they need to know this was not the right way to do it. But yeah, thought error.
It's so important that we recognize that, because we can easily say, I should sugarcoat everything for my kids, right? Because I'm sure there's going to be people, oh, you shouldn't yell at your kids even if they do something wrong. But there does have to be consequences, and the consequences don't have to be drastic where we yell and berate them. It can simply be, well, we have to stop playing right now and we have to focus on cleaning up.
Natural consequences.
Yes. Yeah. And they learn, this is not fun. I would rather be playing. So how can I play more and not have to clean up? And it's important that we understand that, and for them to understand that. And I think the way they understand it is by, okay, the reason why this happened was because I wasn't careful. How can I be more careful? And they learn how to be more careful. It's just a growing process, because they can easily look at it as mom or dad is mad at me. They don't like me, or they don't love me. They yelled at me. I found, even in my teaching career, I never had to yell at a student. From the teachers who yelled to the teachers who didn't yell, it was night and day to classroom management. I had zero classroom management issues because I was always cool, calm, and collective. I would go into the room, and as soon as they come in, I set the tone. Because if I set the tone, yelling and screaming, guess what they're going to do? Oh, that's the tone today. Let's make it happen. But I would always go. And I remember I taught music and I had chorus. And the only thing I did to get their attention, I put my hand up. I go, my turn. That's it. And I'll keep my hand up. And I think the longest it took was about 5 minutes. And you know what I said after that 5 minutes? I said, that took 5 minutes and we wasted 5 minutes of class. If that ever happens again, no one's going to be happy here. Never happened again. I didn't have to yell at them. I just kind of threatened them a little bit, I guess you could say. But it wasn't a threat directed at an individual. That's not going to happen again. Just simply saying that, and it fixed the issue.
Interesting. I like that. Not in an individual. That's one of the things that in a parenting course I took, they talk about the difference between siblings and how sibling rivalry comes because we point out each kid and like get on one kid. So that's really interesting that you say that about not individualizing.
And it's so important that we understand that we can either be the bad guy or we can be someone who's going to help them grow. Whether you're a teacher or a parent, it doesn't matter. An aspect of growing up, part of the stages of childhood development is values and belief. And the values and the beliefs that we hold are tied to our character. And they're also tied to the circle of, I guess you could say, the deep health circle of spirituality, of existential, right? There's something else for us. And I think if we can give ourselves some meaning or some promise in life, it helps us to take better action and to want to make changes. So we might be a very rambunctious kid and mom is always pulling her hair out or dad's always yelling at us. That kid can have a epiphany, I guess you can say, is like, I'm causing him so much stress or her so much stress. What can I do to change, right? Are we going down that type of path, or are we looking at spirituality in the sense of my soul, my being, my character? There's something for me. There's a purpose that I have to fulfill. I mean, I guess we can kind of look at both sides of the coin, but in your expertise, what would that type of existential realm be?
Yeah, that differentiation is really interesting. I mean, I think it would probably depend on the person. But when you say that about thinking of an individual, like having that even be a purpose, I really like that because it sometimes, like typically when I talk about existential health or having a sense of purpose, if I'm talking about it with my clients, we're talking about like, why are you in this job right now? Or like, why are you going through, or why did you choose this job that does have you working 60 plus hours a week? Like, what was it about this job that really drove you? Where do you see it fulfilling like a bigger purpose in your life? So it typically is more broad. But I really like that idea of how do we frame that in helping and basically making it easier, someone else's life easier, like an individual's life easier. Somebody's purpose could be as simple as that. In terms of like how I see this fitting into the deep health wheel, like on a broader scale, is when we feel lost or like that we're missing something. Like how I see that actually manifest sometimes is literally people searching through the cupboards for something. So I've had clients say, I don't know why, I'm not hungry, I'm not even really craving anything specific, but every night I find myself looking through the cupboards and it's like, I'm looking for something and I just keep eating things that I see and it's not it and it's not it. And I just keep going until I just feel gross. And often what that is we literally feel lost, like we've lost something or a piece of us, or there's some purpose that we are like missing and we will look for it in other things. It might not be food. It could be people that are online shopping, trying to find the exact right shoes or the exact right dress, or people like binging on Netflix because they're like, or like searching for shows. That sense of missing something can manifest in us in behaviors that we don't really like, but we don't really know why we're doing them. So when it comes to nutrition, that's just an example how having a sense of purpose can show up. I think too, like if you're day-to-day living at work, you don't feel like your work is serving a greater purpose, it can kind of just really sucks your energy out. And so when your energy is low, you don't want to go work out. You don't want to eat the healthy food. You're just bored. And so then you're looking for other things to fulfill that sort of dopamine hit or feeling of pleasure because you're not fulfilled in other areas of your life. And often people say, well, I don't know what I want. Like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life. But that's what I love what you said about just finding one person whose life you could make better. It just simplifies the whole thing.
your analogy or your visualization of the cupboard, right? It got me thinking of the other day when I was looking for some Manuka honey in my pantry, and I know I got it. It's somewhere in there. I only found the raw honey, and I was like, okay, I got the raw honey, but then I had some regular honey that we use for tea and stuff. I wanted the Manuka honey because Manuka honey is really good for your throat if you feel like you're getting a cold or if you're losing your voice. And I talk a lot, not just because I like talking, but because it's for work and for podcasting and all that. So I do a lot of talking. So I was looking for my Manuka honey because it's my remedy for any type of voice problems I have. I couldn't find it, but I can guarantee you if I called my wife and say, could you find the Manuka honey for me? And she would say, it's right here, right in front of my eyes. So I'm looking through this pantry, I'm shuffling through all the shelves and I can't find it. But if I asked her for help, she could find it very easily. And in the same sense, that's what we have the ability to ask for help in when it comes to coaching, whether it be nutrition and health coaching. Sometimes the item that we're looking for, the fix that we're looking for is right in front of our eyes. And we just need someone to say, hey, it's right here. Let me get that for you.
Totally.
And we make it so easy. And it's so important that we have someone on our side helping us, seeing our blind spots or helping us when we get frustrated to calm down, to see the importance. It's very easy in this life to get distracted, to become unaware, to find ourselves without purpose. But we have to become aware. And just the surface level of our conversation, I mean, we were talking a lot about health and fitness, and then we went into the deep health circle. It's all about life and all about betterment to that individual. So I know the clients that you work with are ecstatic to be with you, number one, because they're starting to learn more about themselves and they're starting to see the changes that they can make or the changes that they have made. Because sometimes you just need someone on your side, a team member, to kind of make it very aware. Oh, this is what I needed. And that's what I do too. I'm always saying, how can I make your life better? But it's not me changing your life, it's you making yourself aware. That awareness is so essential. And the conversation we had today is essential. And I know the work that you do is essential. And it's a brief conversation. I mean, we can go on all day talking about the work we do because I can tell that you're in love with it. I'm in love with mindset coaching. It's all under the same roof. But before we, say our goodbyes, I want to kind of get your final words on health coaching, life coaching, nutrition. After that, of course, please tell how the audience can find you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the connectedness of all of it is so fascinating. Even when I look at earth sciences, which is what I initially went to school for, and then seeing how that ties into nutrition, which is where our food comes from. The healthiest food is the food that's straight from the earth, and how that then affects our physical health, mental health, emotional health, like all the aspects of deep health. That connectedness of it is, to me, like one of the great mysteries and yet the clearest things in our lives of building it from the ground up. And it can start from anywhere on that wheel. But I think, like you said, if we feel off balance, having a coach to help us to figure out where the best place is to start and to just keep focused on that goal is really essential for creating lasting change. I am on Instagram at jolene.hermanson. I have my website's jolenehermanson.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, Jolene Hermanson.
Perfect. And I will definitely get those links and I'll put them in the description box so people can easily reach out to you, check out your work. And I encourage everyone to check out Jolene because the work that she does is just the beginning. And I know this year, 2023, it can be filled with challenges. It could be filled with a lot of uneasiness. But if you're looking for someone who can help you with your health, your life in general, you don't have to look too far. Jolene is going to be a great person to have in your corner, helping you along the way. I want to thank Jolene so much, of course, for coming on Coaching in Session. It was a great conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching the interview with Jolene Hermanson and myself. As you can see, great conversation, number one, but number two, these conversations are always so interesting because we're starting off the new year and we are having a streak of amazing coaches come on Coaching in Session, one after the other. Who do you pick? And I know it can be very, very difficult. And the only thing I'm going to say is why not try them all? We will go to a grocery store and we'll try different brands of different things. Maybe you want the main product and that's perfectly fine too. But what I can tell you is that personality is so essential because you might have one health coach, another health coach, and then someone else who's a health coach who can help you with your health. But maybe two of those three people don't have the personality that you're looking for. Using me as an example, I'm very tough. You're not going to get some sugarcoating with me. You're going to get the truth, the raw truth, and the truth sometimes hurts. And not every one of my clients can handle it. So if you have a very emotional sense of who you are, then you have to find someone who's going to meet you at that level. For me, I'm all about results. And though every other coach is about results, I'm very aware of your potential, and that compassion that you might get from someone else is going to be very difficult for you to get it from me. But I know Jolene, just from speaking with her today, she's very caring, she's very loving, and she wants people to do better, to succeed, to get to a better health and to a better life. And it could be as easy as checking out her website, following her on social media, and then beginning the process to create that relationship. Because the relationships that we nurture are going to be the relationships that grow, and those relationships can help change our life. Because we can plant the seed for success, happiness, growth, physical attractiveness, relationship. Whatever that seed is, we have to do the work. We have to take care of the soil. We have to take care of what sprouts. And it's easy to forget that. We can't just simply make excuses. We can't simply give ourselves a reason not to take action. This year can be an amazing year. It could be our best year yet. We just have to do what we need to do every single day. And I know Jolene is going to be able to help you stay on track, stay focused, and stay hungry to get to your goals and get the results that you want. And in lieu to mindset, you can always check out revenconcepts.com. You can read our blogs, watch our motivational videos, and continue to listen to the podcast, and to continue to grow through conversation and through the ability, which is you. You have the ability to change your whole entire life. It might be a step at a time. It might be a total overhaul. Regardless of which action you take, understand that you are in charge of what is going to be the aftermath, the end result. Don't allow excuses to be your end result. Allow the change to be your end result. The change that you want, not the change someone else wants, because people can want different things for you. What do you want? And if you want something more in your life, whether it be health, better nutrition, better mindset, get yourself a coach that's going to be able to help get the results that you're looking for. And it's as easy as making sure that you get the coach that you need that's going to help you get the results that you're looking for. It doesn't have to be something challenging. It doesn't have to be something difficult. And before we go, just a quick recap on the 6 dimensions of deep health to make it very aware for people. It's going to be talking about physical, mental, emotional, relational, environmental, and existential. Those are going to be the foundation that we're trying to make. And I'm going to say that I'm not an expert in health and nutrition. I know a lot about health and nutrition, but when people come to me for health and nutrition, I have a pool of people that I recommend to my clients who I can't help, because my goal is to help someone 100%. And if I can't help you 100%, who can? Who can be there? Who can be that resource for you? It's very important for me for that quality control to make sure that I'm giving you everything I can. And then, of course, that you're doing your part too, because I can't do it by myself. And I know if you're a coach and you have clients, you understand that you can help your client with so many different things. And the client can do so many different things. And if both people are not on board, it's going to be very difficult to function properly in that relationship. So you need 2 people that are going to coexist together and work on the aspect of building. How can I build, for example, these 6 dimensions of deep health? It might be as simple as changing your habits, giving yourself some purpose, or finding yourself a coach. Regardless of whatever step you take, we're going to be here at Reven Concepts, coaching you, giving you motivation all along the way so you can get to that finish line. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.